The Buffalo Bills featured one of the best offensive lines in the NFL in 2024. How should we project it moving forward? We're discussing that today on Locked On Bills.
You are Locked On Bills, your daily Buffalo Bills podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Bills Mafia? It's Joe Marino, author of the Herd Mentality Substack, co-host of the Locked On NFL Scouting Podcast, co-host of the NFL First Read Podcast, and I'm your host of Locked On Bills. Want to thank you for making Locked On Bills your first listen every day, and a big welcome and shout out to our everydayers. You know who you are. Those of you who never miss a single episode, I appreciate y'all being here very, very much. I'd also like to invite you to subscribe or follow for free on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Well, folks, welcome in. We're talking offensive line here on today's podcast. Want to reflect on the season that was, project things moving forward, and really discuss the offseason and what needs to happen here with this group, including an idea that I don't think many people are considering. So let's dive into it. Let's start by talking about Dion Dawkins, who has absolutely been the pillar and anchor of this offensive line for a number of years. A 2017 second-round pick, number 63 overall. He's 30 years old, turns 31 in April. He is aging like fine wine, entering the first year of his 3-year, $60 million contract extension. In 2024, he played in 16 games, started all 16 of those, was on the field for 94% of snaps, 13 penalties, allowed 3 sacks and 22 pressures on 585 pass blocking snaps. As far as his 2024 review, I think Dion Dawkins has firmly entrenched himself as an upper echelon NFL left tackle. I think he's a top 5 left tackle in the NFL, and he's such a unique player. The way that he lines up is just really different. His splits are very wide, and how close he is to the ball is not like any other offensive tackle that I've really seen. In fact, you see the opposite a lot of times, where a lot of these tackles line up so far back that they're nearly lined up in an illegal formation because they're so far back. They have to be able to cover up that ball a little bit better, and they don't. And it's pretty crazy how much Dion Dawkins trusts both his athleticism and his technique. You know, a lot of guys want to be able to get into their kick slide, frame their pass rusher, get their hands on, and try to, really just mirror and frame. Dion Dawkins wants hands-on immediately. He wants to take the air out of the snap. He trusts that he's got the athleticism to get the depth and width that he needs and stay in front of a guy, and boy, does he do a nice job of that. And I love that he doesn't matter who he's facing. He's going up against a guy like Chop Robinson, who's a rookie, but certainly one of the most explosive rushers in the NFL with his ability to get off the line. And Dion doesn't play any differently against him as he would a power-style rusher. So I admire the way that he plays. It's very unique. I've not really seen anything like it. And obviously he's a good pass protector, but the run blocking is also outstanding. He can move people off the line of scrimmage. He's very good at pulling and getting into space, getting down the field. He's just an all-around impact blocker. Athletic dude, leadership, right? He certainly provides that to this football team. You got to love the personality that comes with Dion Dawkins. He's a total dude. I think if there's a growth area for Dion, it's penalties. Big spike in penalties this year, 13 of them. You'd like to see that get cleaned up. But as far as his 2025 outlook, just looking for more of the same. And just be the guy you've been the last few years. I think he's comfortably playing the best football of his career. You can see how since Aaron Kromer's come over to the Bills, there's been another level that he's unlocked. And I'm excited to see him continue to be the type of player he's been. And I don't know if there's any more ceiling for him to develop into, but if he's exactly what he's been throughout the duration of his contract, the Bills are going to be just fine at the left tackle position. Spencer Brown is his running mate on the other side, a 2021 third-round pick, number 93 overall. He's 26, turns 27 on February 28th, so he's got a birthday coming up here pretty soon. Entering year one of that 4-year, $72 million contract extension that he signed ahead of last season. And that was definitely a risk for both parties, the Bills and Spencer Brown. The Bills obviously committing to Spencer Brown after the big breakout season in year 3. And, it certainly was satisfied with that growth, but you were wondering how much more he could showcase. And obviously that turned out to be a great story. And then for Spencer Brown, he does that extension early. If he waited and had the season that he did, I bet you that APY comes in a little bit higher, if not, maybe even $5 million more per season. But the deal's done, and Spencer Brown's locked in for the Bills. And for the Bills, he's locked in at a pretty good rate. In 2024, he played in 15 games with 15 starts. He did miss the Week 11 game against Kansas City. And, of course, a lot of these guys are only going to start 16 games. That's because the Bills didn't play a lot of their starters in Week 18, so don't forget that. On the field for 98% of snaps in those 15 games, 16 penalties, allowed 1 sack, and 17 pressures on 537 pass blocking snaps. As far as his 2024 review, I thought he took another step. Obviously, the big breakthrough was in 2023. He built on that in 2024. And I'm honestly not convinced that he wasn't every bit as good, if not better, than Dawkins this season. And I thought that's how well Spencer Brown played. His impact in the run game is notable. You can definitely, just watch the games. He's blasting open holes left and right. And not only is he doing that play side, but, when he's asked to pull and connect with moving targets or open up a seam, with the trap block, and this guy gets it done. A very, very high impact run blocker. And in pass protection, what I appreciate about him and Dion Dawkins is neither one of them get any help. These guys play on an island. There's no chippers. The Bills don't keep running backs in the pass block very often. The Bills like to maximize their eligible receivers. You only get 5 eligible receivers on any given snap to go out for a route. And if you keep guys in to block, well, guess what? You got less eligible players out on routes for Josh Allen to consider throwing the football to. And so these tackles, Dion Dawkins and Spencer Brown, because they're so good, allows the Bills to maximize their eligible receivers because these guys don't get any help. And honestly, they don't really need any help. I think just like with Dion Dawkins, the big thing here is penalties. 16 penalties. That's a lot. So you're talking about 13 penalties from the left tackle, 16 penalties from the right tackle. That's too many. They got to get that cut in half, honestly. I think half of that would be a more reasonable number that you would anticipate. So that's kind of the big knock on both of those guys right now. But for 2025, I'm looking for more of the same. Brown and Dawkins is comfortably a top 3 tackle tandem in the NFL. I think there's not many teams that are in the conversation. Maybe the Eagles certainly are with Jordan Mailata and Lane Johnson. The Lions, Taylor Decker, Penei Sewell. The Chargers with Rashawn Slater and Joe Alt. Maybe the Colts with Bernard Raymond and Braden Smith. Vikings, Darisaw and O'Neal. But I feel pretty comfortable that this is a top 3 tackle tandem. They mean a lot for this offense, like I mentioned, with their protection schemes, using a 5-man blocking surface almost every snap, how they pull and impact the run scheme. Now, these guys are a big part of fundamentally how the Bills can play offense. And it's nice to know that they're, locked up together for the next 3 years. And I anticipate a number of good seasons still to come for Dion Dawkins and Spencer Brown as this tackle tandem. All right, so that's the starting tackles. Coming up next, we're going to talk about the middle 3. And I think there's a big domino here with these middle 3 starters, and the Bills have a choice to make. So we'll talk about that here on the other side of it. Folks, be sure to stick with me. When the game tips off, the NBA action is just getting started, and there's no better place to get in on it than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. With FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout the game, so even if you miss the opening tip-off or want to bet on a fourth-quarter comeback, you can stay in the action. And if you're looking for a bigger payout, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay. I love using FanDuel's live betting feature because it keeps every moment of the game more exciting. Whether I'm backing my team for a late-game rally or picking a player to hit a clutch 3, I never feel like I miss my chance. Plus, the app is easy to use, and when you win, you get paid instantly. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets If your first $5 bet wins, just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. All right, let's talk about this middle three. We'll get into Connor McGovern next, a 2023 free agent signing. He's 27 years old, turns 28 in November, entering the final deal of his 3-year, $22.4 million contract. And I think there's a conversation about a contract extension here because that will open up cap space in 2025 with his cap hits expected to be a little over $9 million. So you can extend him, bring that number down, spread it throughout the course of the deal, and get 2025 cap space while further locking yourself into a guy that's been an answer for you for your offensive line and looks like he's settling into this center position. In 2024, 16 games, 16 starts on the field for 94% of snaps, 3 penalties, allowed 0 sacks, and 24 pressures on 581 pass blocking snaps. I thought the transition here was outstanding. From him going to left guard to center, releasing Mitch Morse, there was a lot of questions about how that would happen. I think the Bills had terrific foresight and nailed it. Obviously got younger at center, moving on from Mitch Morse, getting the cap savings. It was over $8 million in cap savings to move on from Morse and slide McGovern over. And I thought it went really well. There were some growing pains early on, not necessarily with, whiffing on blocks or not being able to execute, but I thought there were some communication issues early in the season with the middle three and responding to pressure looks, but I thought that improved very quickly. There was no snap issues. I know that was a conversation they creeped up during training camp, but they got that figured out, and it wasn't an issue throughout the course of the year. And I think Connor McGovern's become a pillar of this offensive line, and he's got that relationship with Josh Allen, which really matters. That center quarterback relationship is a big deal, and I think that it appears McGovern and Allen really have that rapport that's necessary to get the line calls down and be on the same page. And so in 2025, it's his second full season at center. I'd like for him to build upon that great first year that he had, and let's get an extension done. Like I said, a little over $9 million, $9.35 million cap hit for 2025. Take that down, spread it out, get more cap space, get more Connor McGovern. And, you really feel like you got 3 big-time pillars here in your tackles and your center, which is exactly where you'd want those pillars for your offensive line to be. Let's talk O'Cyrus Torrence, the Bills starting right guard. He was a draft pick, a 2023 second-round draft pick. And he's 25. He actually just turned 25 back in January, so new to being 25. He's entering the third year of his 4-year, $6.2 million contract. So he'll be extension eligible after this season. So very much the conversation that we are having right now about Terrell Bernard, Christian Benford, Khalil Shakir, James Cook, that goes to O'Cyrus Torrence after this season. Played in 17 games, started 16 of them, on the field for 93% of snaps, 7 penalties, did not allow a sack, 37 pressures given up on 591 pass blocking snaps. In 2024, I thought this was a very stable year for O'Cyrus Torrence. As a rookie in 2023, I thought he faded a little bit down the stretch, but I thought this year he maintained his level of play throughout the season. I thought he did a much better job of handling quicker interior pass rushers. Last year, I thought that gave him some challenges, where this year I thought he was a lot more comfortable with how he dealt with those twitchier, speedier guys on the inside. And so I thought it was a good year. Did he take like a massive step forward and look like he's going to be a star at guard? I don't think he did that, but I think he affirmed himself as a good starter. And so the 2025 outlook for me with O'Cyrus Torrence is, can you go from good to quality? Can you be an above average starting right guard? I think there's plenty of reason to believe that can happen with him having some experience and now, having the same O-line coach, same system, same players next to him. I think that'll help unlock more from O'Cyrus Torrence. I will say that when there are timing issues, particularly in the run game, usually O'Cyrus Torrence is involved. And so I'm looking for that to get cleaned up because it really doesn't happen anywhere else with the O-line, where you see a combo block and Osiris might leave early, or he's the guy that's responsible for the first level, and he might not secure that in a fashion that's helpful to the play design, just kind of cleaning up some stuff like that. But it's a big year for him. Like I said, he's extension eligible after the season. The guard market has exploded. You've got several guards getting paid north of $20 million. You're seeing, I think good to slightly above average guards getting paid $10 to $15 million a year. And so this conversation can really explode for Osiris Torrance. And it just depends on what type of caliber of player he can develop into in year 3. I think he's already a good player. How much more can there be to unlock? And I think we're going to really find that out in year 3. Let's talk David Edwards, the Bills starting left guard, a 2023 free agent signing. He signed like a 1-year minimum type deal. Then he signed an extension last offseason, 2 years, $6 million. And that worked out pretty well. He's 27 years old. He turns 28 in March, entering that second season of a 2-year, $6 million deal. And to me, this is the big domino of the entire offseason for this offensive line. Do the Bills continue with David Edwards at left guard as the starter, or do they move on? And I think you can convince me of either possibility, because he's a perfectly good player and he's not that expensive. But you can release him and get $4 million in cap savings with only $875,000 in dead cap accumulation. So that's not nothing. And the Bills do have some intriguing younger players that I could look at and feel like could compete for that left guard job, whether that's Alec Anderson, who's been the 6th offensive lineman, Tylen Grable, I'm not sleeping on as a candidate for that role. And so is this your opportunity to, get younger and find a path for one of those young players? I think that's what's challenging, and we'll get into this more in the next segment, is the Bills have a bunch of intriguing young developing offensive linemen in Alec Anderson, in Tylen Grable, in Cedric Van Granger, in Ryan Vandemark. And there's no path really for them to start, because these guys are all veterans. There's bigger investments involved in them. They're good players. And so what's your path to potentially getting more economic while also giving a young player that looks like they could be deserving of it an opportunity? This is it, right? This is your spot to do it. And so, again, I think there's a good chance David Edwards is right back at the Bills starting left guard next year, and that'd be fine. But also, is this an opportunity to save that $4 million and open it up to one of these young players that gives them a path to getting into this lineup? I can be convinced of either side of it, and I think it's worth talking about. In 2024, David Edwards played in 16 games, started 16 of them, 96% of snaps, 6 penalties, did not give up a sack, conceded 25 pressures on 587 pass blocking snaps. So he goes from the 6th offensive lineman to the starting left guard job. And I thought he provided stable play. He's very smart. He's a former quarterback that knows what everyone's supposed to do on the offense on any given play, and is a reliable player. I like David Edwards as the left guard. And so the 2025 outlook really comes down to, are you back, right? And if he's back, I expect him to start and be a pretty similar player to what he was this past year. He could also be released, and you could be looking at a competition between Tylen Grable, who has the exact same measurements, like literally the exact same size, would comfortably project to the left guard spot, or even Alec Anderson, who's proven himself as the utility blocker for this offensive line. So I think there's a fascinating dynamic and a fascinating domino here as it relates to David Edwards. All right, we'll talk about the possible guys to replace David Edwards, some of this developing young depth, and really set the tone for what this offseason could look like as it relates to the offensive line. Folks, be sure to stick with me. Welcome back, folks. I want to remind you of the Herd Mentality Substack. I am writing articles, having a lot of fun, publishing about 3 per week over at the Herd Mentality Substack. I just put one out on Sunday where I profiled 3 different free agent wide receivers, field stretchers in particular, that I think could be on the Bills' radar. Talked about the merits of signing them, the concerns, gave my recommendation, talked projected salary, and I also put together a film reel for each player. And in particular, I was looking at guys that are down the field receivers. So the film reels are target reels of all of their 2024 targets 20 yards or more down the field. And so I got to a pretty firm conclusion on who I'd like the Bills to go after. in free agency at wide receiver. Probably going to do that for defensive ends later this week as well, as part of my published schedule for Herd Mentality. So check it out, Herd Mentality Substack. There's a link in today's show notes. You can see all the stuff that I'm writing. If you're looking for more content from me, I certainly have it over there at the Herd Mentality Substack. Again, a link in today's show notes to check that out. All right, let's keep talking about these Bills offensive linemen. This is so interesting because the Bills have a good starting five, and then they have exciting developing young depth that really, really intrigues me. Let's get into Alec Anderson here. 2022 undrafted free agent, 25 years old. He turns 26 in October. He's back on a 1-year exclusive rights free agent deal. So 1 year, $1 million. And, that's kind of the deal with an exclusive rights free agent. It's players that have an expired contract, but less than 2 accrued seasons or something like that. So they're kind of in a pattern that doesn't really put them in position to be an unrestricted free agent. In fact, next year he'll be a restricted free agent. So he's back on this 1 year, $1 million deal. And as an exclusive rights free agent, you really don't have any choice. You can go back to the team that you were on for a minimum contract, or you don't play. That's literally what their options are. So in 2024, he played in 17 games, started 4 of them, was on the field for 27% of the Bills' offensive snaps. That's pretty notable. 6 penalties, did not allow a sack, and gave up 1 pressure, only 79 pass blocking snaps. A lot of his usage was in the run game. His 2024 review, he was a huge impact to this run scheme. The Bills leaned into condensed formations, not a lot of spread, bringing everyone together tighter, and I think that unlocked a lot for James Cook with his speed and his ability to kind of bounce and get into space and have some explosive runs. And of course, James does a good job of navigating these tight quarters. And so you're comfortable with condensed formations, whether it's, hey, figure it out with, a lot of bodies around you or use your speed. I thought that really worked. And I think Alec Anderson's a key piece of how that goes. Of course, the Bills like to use big people to do big people things. And so asking a 6th offensive lineman to step on the field as opposed to, a tight end, it gives them bigger people to do big people things. And, this blended run scheme that the Bills use, this, heavy personnel run scheme, Alec Anderson's an important part of that equation, and he's fallen into line, right? Tommy Doyle did it a few years ago. Bobby Hart, David Edwards did it. Now it's Alec Anderson. The Bills have kind of sprinkled in different guys in this role, and it's been a good one for this offense. He brings a lot of personality to the table. That's something that you've been able to glean from listening to players and coaches, so I think that's a big part of this mix of culture and locker room dynamics. And he's extremely versatile. So, of course, most of his snaps coming as a tight end, 152 tight end snaps. But then he also played this year 112 at left guard, 7 at left tackle, 8 at center, and 8 at right guard. This is a true 5-position, 6-position guy, extremely valuable. And so his 2025 outlook is, I think he's either the 6th offensive lineman again in that same role, or, like I said, is he competing to be the starting left guard? There'll be a spot for Alec Anderson. It's just a matter of which one of those 2 options he fills. Let's talk Cedric Van Pran Granger, 2024 5th-round pick, number 141 overall. He's 23, turns 24 in October, entering the 2nd season of his 4-year, $4.4 million deal. Appeared in 16 games with 1 start. On the field for 12% of snaps, which was 120 total snaps this season. No penalties, no sacks allowed, 1 pressure on 40 pass blocking snaps. I really liked what I saw from Cedric Van Pran Granger in preseason. I really liked him coming out of Georgia. Just screams solid NFL player to me. Leadership components from his time in college, where he was a very experienced player at Georgia, multi-year team captain. And I think he's a good developmental piece for this offensive line. I think his path to a starting role probably requires injuries. So I look at him as more developing depth. I do think it's notable that every preseason snap came at center. And then during the season, he played 120 total snaps, 119 of them came at center. So I think it's going to be important for him to prove himself at guard. Got some chances during training camp at guard, but that, even more preseason reps at guard, I think will be helpful for him to really increase his value as a reserve. You don't want to be a 1 if you're a one-spot backup as a reserve offensive lineman, that's not a good spot for you to be. So I'm not saying he can't play guard, and I think the Bills do believe that he can play guard. But I want to get more comfortable with that as he becomes an important developing depth piece for this offensive line moving forward. Let's talk Tylen Grable, and I'm excited about Tylen Grable. 2024 sixth-round pick, number 204 overall. 25 years old. He turns 26 in October, entering the second season of his rookie contract, 4-year, $4.2 million deal. In 2024, he played in 4 games, started 1. That was the Patriots game there at the end of the season. In those 4 games that he was active for, he was on the field for 31% of snaps, 1 penalty, no sacks, no pressures on 36 pass blocking snaps. Like I said, I'm really excited for Tylen Grable. I thought his preseason was exceptional. And because of that, he became the Bills' starting swing tackle. Now, remember, that was a role held by Ryan Vandemark, and Ryan Vandemark's still around. And Tylen Grable beat him out for that. And I think that says a lot about Tylen Grable to come in and beat out the experienced player that held the role the year before that was returning. This guy took it. And then he has a core muscle injury early in the season that keeps him out for a while, but eventually he reclaimed that swing tackle role. So even after, he misses time, Vandemark comes in and starts that Chiefs game. By the end of the season, it was right back to Grable being active on game days and Ryan Vandemark being inactive. So I think that says a lot about Grable. And look, I think his 2025 outlook, I think 3 different things can happen here. I think he could be the swing tackle again. I think he can compete for that left guard job. It would not surprise me if he has a real chance to be the left guard. Or if Alec Anderson's the left guard, could he be the Alec Anderson player this year as the jumbo tight end? I think there'll be a spot for Tylen Grable to do something meaningful. And any one of those 3 things would be meaningful. And I think he'll be in position to do it. And, I just think about the player I watched at UCF to the player I watched in preseason with the Bills. And even, he got a couple chances to play throughout the course of the season. I've seen a massive jump. I love the technique that he shows. And I think there's some ceiling here. I think this could be a sleeper. And I'm really excited for Tylen Grable. All right, last offensive lineman to profile, and then we'll tie a ribbon on the conversation, is Ryan Vandemark, who was a practice squad signing in August of 2022. He's 26, turns 27. His contract is just like with Alec Anderson. He's an exclusive rights free agent. He signed his 1-year, $1 million deal. He'll be a restricted free agent next year. And so he's back. In 2024, he played in 14 games with 2 starts. Of course, week 11 against the Chiefs, and then week 18 against the Patriots. 22% of the snaps in those 14 games, did not commit a penalty or allow a sack. Gave up 5 pressures on 96 pass blocking snaps. I think he's on a good path. Like I said, started that Chiefs game in week 11. I think he's shown a lot in the preseason. I remember coming out of the 2023 preseason being really excited about Vandemark, and then he winds up being the swing tackle. And then, he continues to show himself as a guy that's developing both on the left and the right side. I think there was a point where you just felt like he was a lot better on the left side, but then he gets a chance to play more on the right side. His start against the Chiefs came on the right side, and it looks like he can hold his own there as well. So just growth, right? I think you continue to see that every exposure that you get to Ryan Vandemark. And I think he's shown a lot in the last 2 years. And there's been a lot of games where the Bills have been one snap away from him going in. And I think there's been some underappreciated moments that he stepped in and handled things, even as a rookie. But this past season, was it the Colts game? He had to step in unexpectedly. It's happened. And he seems to meet that moment just about every time given the opportunity. So he's toolsy. He's athletic. He's blossoming more and more every year. He's a intriguing developmental piece of this offensive line. And so as far as my 2025 outlook for him, I think he's in position to be the swing tackle. And, like I said, if Tylen Grable is truly in the mix to potentially be the left guard, I think that puts Ryan Vandemark as the favorite to be the first guy in at left or right tackle, or compete with Tylen Grable. There's a lot of good. I love all these competitive dynamics with this reserve offensive line, the youth, the upside, the versatility. It's a really, really good formula. So let's tie a ribbon on this offensive line. Obviously had an outstanding year. They were only responsible for giving up 4 sacks all season long. That's the fewest in the NFL by far of any offensive line. And like I said, there's a lot on their plate. The Bills pass block with 5, probably more than any team in the NFL. Not a lot of help. And these guys get it done. Obviously, the run scheme is blended. It can look different week to week. Everybody pulls. That's a really cool thing. Like last year, it was your tackles pulling a lot. This year, you saw Edwards and Torrance going as well. Saw some pin and pull stuff with McGovern as well. So there's a lot on the plate of these guys to be, very versatile with their run schemes. And of course, just so much on their plate with pass protection. And they absolutely answer the call. So what do the Bills have? Well, they have everyone under contract. They could run it back with the same offensive line, literally 1 through 9 that they did this past year. And I love the mix here. You got 3 pillars, your left tackle, your right tackle, your center. You got a rookie contract at right guard. You have a modestly paid vet at left guard. It's a good, just collection of pieces and how they form this offensive line in terms of how you'd like it to look. And I do think there's 4 interesting developmental players here in Grable, Van DeMark, Anderson, and Cedric Van Pran Granger. Plus, you have some intriguing, futures deals guys. Mike Edwards, this offensive lineman, he's 380 pounds. This huge dude that's very, very athletic. I'm excited to see him in his second season, full opportunity throughout training camp and preseason to show what he can do. Richard Garage, who I think has been really solid in preseason. That's just another one of these guys in the pipeline. Travis Clayton, the rugby player they drafted, he kind of took a redshirt year this season, and expectations are low, but he's very, very, very athletic. I'm curious to see what type of opportunities he gets this year and the offseason in particular to showcase himself. Does he get some run in preseason? Can he play? I think this will be interesting to find out. So just the pipeline is deep. So what do the Bills need to do here? They got to decide on David Edwards. That's the entire domino for this offensive line conversation. If he's back, all right, great. You pretty much know the roles that everyone's in, and you feel good about everything. And if not, I totally understand the idea of, hey, between Grable and Anderson, you probably do have a starting left guard. You can get a little bit cheaper, save a little money, and that kind of puts everyone else into some different roles. And then you potentially do have a roster spot available to add another player to this mix. And so, there really might, if you don't move on from David Edwards, there might not be much to do here in terms of adding personnel. You're pretty loaded up, maybe a few bodies for camp, but you could see exactly who the 9 guys would be that they would roster. I'd be surprised if it was anything different, and I don't think that would be disappointing at all if that was exactly what happened here. Then the other thing they need to do is go ahead and extend Connor McGovern. He's your answer at center. Save that cap space, extend McGovern, keep him around for longer. I think that's a very logical thing to do. So potentially not a whole lot to do here, but certainly a big domino here in David Edwards and then taking care of that extension for Connor McGovern. So there you have it. Bills offensive line, exciting position group. And that's a good place to be. You got a guy like Josh Allen as your quarterback. You like to feel good about your offensive line. And that's exactly the way that we feel based on how it's been built and how it's been coached and how the talent has developed along the way. It's a good story to tell here. All right, folks, that's it for today. We got plenty of defensive positions to get to. We're going to do herd mentality this week. We've got potentially the Bills will finalize their coaching staff, and we can kind of see exactly what that looks like and what roles everyone is in. So tons of content that you don't want to miss. So make sure you subscribe. Make sure you come on back. Take a moment to rate, review, and share the podcast. Have a great rest of your day. Go Bills, and I look forward to catching up with you again tomorrow.